And we're in the DaAs Tevunos of the Ramchal. It's a dialogue between a person's neshama and a seichel. The neshama says, I believe in the 13 ani mamins as articles of faith. I understand how 9 of them work, or I understand them rationally. 4 of them I don't understand, and I have to understand them. Shitas Ramchal, Chavis Alvoves, Shalah, other great tzaddikim, other great gaonim. The pasuk says, "V'yadata hayom v'ashevosa l'vovecha ki Hashem hu Elokim b'shamayim ma'al v'alav mitachas ein od." We say that every day in Aleinu, 3 times in davening. V'yadata hayom, you should know, ki Hashem hu Elokim b'ashevosa l'vovecha, and then let it flow down into your heart, seep into your heart. That God is the God of heaven, the God of earth, and there's no other God. Ein od milvado means a lot more than that, but that's what the pasuk says. The point of the pasuk that we're focusing on is v'yadata hayom. You need to know this. Knowing means you have to put on your thinking cap. You have to understand something. You need to understand, not just believe that God's the only God in heaven and earth. You need to understand these principles. And so the neshama says to the seichel, there are 4 of these ani mamins that I absolutely accept. Moshe passed this down to us from his Kabbalah at Har Sinai. They're absolutely true without any doubt. But I don't understand 4 of them. I can't explain them. I can't explain Hashgacha, that the Rebbeinu Shalom is managing, supervising every event, every millisecond in the world. Chas v'shalom, it looks like the world's in a state of chaos. Chas v'shalom. I don't understand the schar v'onesh. It looks like some good people, a lot of good people never, it'll appear. They're suffering. It looks like Rishoyim, it would appear, doing pretty good. And all of these, as we explained, are really optical illusions. We know that physically you can look at something and it's not that way. We mentioned you go to your Google and you can look up optical illusions and you'll look at something on the screen and you think it's something, but it's really not. And we have physical optical illusions, where spiritual optical illusions are things that look like something to us, but it's not really what it is. So it looks like there's no schar and onesh. And certainly, I can't rationally explain Bias Mashiach, which is a form of reward, great reward, and Chiyas HaMesim, the ultimate reward, to be Nanamis Hashchina. If in my lifetime I look out the window and what I can see, I can't understand Schar V'Onesh. How would I understand the Schar V'Onesh that no one's ever seen before? So those are the 4 things that the Seichel sets out to explain to the Neshama. And the Yesod Asher Alav Nivne Kol HaBinyan, the foundational principle of the whole Sefer, the Ramchal says at the beginning of the book, is God created a perfectly imperfect world for us to perfect. And God is a perfect God in all senses of the word, in ways that we cannot discuss or imagine, which we may get to today. The Ramchal, we get to the Yichud, we may discuss that today. We cannot talk about God. There's no discussion about who God is, what he is, how powerful he is, how smart he is. We gave the example yesterday, the day before. How smart do you think God is? He's 1 million Einsteins, chas v'shalom. Okay? If you wanted to depict him that way. Einstein was a great brain, there's no question about that. But we don't want to depict God. We don't even want to say that God's 1 million Rabbi Akiva acres, chas v'shalom. You can't depict him in human terms. You can take the greatest genius in the world and say, God's 1 million times him. You can say God is 1 million times all the nuclear weapons in the world. Doesn't mean anything. You can't depict God with any positive words. He is so smart, he is so powerful, he is so smart, he knows. You cannot even talk in those terms. We don't talk about God's existence and its use. Not allowed to. And so the foundational principle was that the perfect God made a decision to create an imperfect world. And in this imperfect world, he gave us choices to make, and he put all things around us to help us make those choices. Even the things that are out there that we shouldn't be doing, they're there so that we can make the choice not to do it. And by making these choices, we perfect ourselves and perfect the world around us. And therefore, we become more perfect. The world becomes more perfect, which we call shalem, shlemus. And because of this shlemus, we now become better people to ourselves, our families, etc., our spouses, our neighbors. We become better people. You look yourself in the mirror, and that's your, Ramchal says, Zechuso uschoro, it's your merit and your reward. And again, we'll give the same mushal. You go to the doctor, and the doctor heals you from a physical ailment. You go back to the doctor, you say, doctor, thank you so much, I'm cured. And then you look at the doctor and you say, doctor, and now give me 100 shekel. It doesn't make sense. Why would the doctor pay you? Because he made you well. So this idea, again, as we mentioned earlier today in the Mido Shir about Tomei Meis on the Harabayas, this idea that we got that Olam Haba is our schar. If you do a mitzvah, you get Olam Haba. It's true you get a mitzvah, you're going to get Olam Haba, but that's not the equation. If you do a mitzvah, you learn Torah, you make the right choices, you perfect yourself, you become a sholem, you become spiritually well. You spiritually heal yourself, and we're all spiritually ill, no matter who you are, where you are, when you are. We're all spiritually ill. We suffer from the spiritual genetic disease called the DaAs Tevunos. It's in us. And the Ramchal will talk about that later in the DaAs Tevunos. But it's in us. And we need to perfect that and get rid of that. We need to get rid of that spiritual disease. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, I have a Torah and mitzvahs that can help you do that. Barasi Torah, Barasi le Torah Tavlim, the Gemara says. I created the Yetzer Hara, and I created a spice, a medicine, an antidote for this Yetzer Hara. It's called Torah mitzvahs. And therefore you can get rid of this spiritual disease called DaAs Tevunos. So now you do Torah mitzvahs. You make the right choices in life, and you become a sholem, become a perfected person at whatever level you can do it. And now you turn to God and say, God, look at me. I'm such a perfect person. I'm such a wonderful person. My neighbors love me. My wife loves me. My children love me. The whole community loves me. Everybody loves me because I was kind of shlemus. Now, I'm giving you a piece of Olam Haba for that. What do you mean, give you a piece of Olam Haba for that? I spiritually healed you. You wouldn't look at a physical doctor and say, now pay me because I'm healed. You don't look to Rebbeinu Shalom and say, now pay me because I did a mitzvah. You did the mitzvah, you became a better person. But because you became a better person and a sholem, you now have an entry visa, an entry card that says this person can go into Olam Haba. He became a sholem at his level or whatever level he attained. That's the entry card into Olam Haba. And in Olam Haba, there's something called Nene Mizev Hashchina. But the rewards, Zechusay Uscharei, for doing a mitzvah is you become a better person if you do the mitzvah properly, with the kavana, etc., whatever level you do it at, you become a better person. So Rebbeinu Shalom created the perfectly imperfect world that we can perfect ourselves, perfect the Bria, become better people, and through that heal ourselves, and then eventually through that get the entry visa into Olam Haba to be Nene Mizev Hashchina. The way the Rebbeinu Shalom created this perfectly imperfect world, that's where we're up to. On page Ches in the DaAs Tevunos, we read the footnote of Rav Friedlander at the bottom of page Ches and page Tes, the concept of tzimtzum, that many people, and there are shittas like that, of course, that the tzimtzum, God filled the entire universe, and in order to create the universe, God contracted or withdrew himself into an area, left an open area, and the universe was created in this open area. So God contracted or withdrew and left an open area. That's one version of the tzimtzum. Ramchal's version of the tzimtzum is not dealing with space. It deals with God's power. If God had said, Yehi or, well, the Ramchal's example that he gave at the top of page Ches, Yehi Rakia, let there be a firmament, let the firmament unfold, we would still see firmament unfolding today. God's infinite, he's eternal, and what he says is infinite and eternal, like the Torah words are infinite and eternal. So when God said, Yiraki, it would be still unfolding. God said, let animals pop out of the ground. We'd still be seeing new species popping out of the ground. Don't you think for a second that there can't be more species? There can be species that have 5 legs, 6 legs, 8 legs, 10 legs. There can be cows that are purple with pink polka dots. There can be species we never even heard of. God didn't lose his imagination at the amount of species that we see or the amount of species that went on the table. God decided that for purposes of this world, this is how much it's needed. And that's the name Shaddai. Shaddai, enough. So when the firmament unfolded, the Rakhi unfolded to a place where God felt that was enough for the creation, he said, die, that's it. When enough species came of animals and behemoths and chais came out of the ground, the Rebbeinu Shalom said, die. Not that he couldn't make more, he's perfect, he'll be eternal. They'd be popping out of your garden right now. But the Rebbeinu Shalom said, die. I said animals should pop out of the ground, but that's die. This is all that we need for the world that I'm going to create for Adam. That's Tzimtzum 1. God restrained, used self-restraint, quote unquote, and said enough. This is where I'm going to stop creation. That's the level of Tzimtzum, the godly level of Tzimtzum. Then there's a second Tzimtzum the Ramchal talks about, and that's the level of Tzimtzum on the human level, meaning that once God decided that the world was going to be perfectly imperfect, and the way he did this perfectly imperfect was by restraining his perfection, which gave off an imperfect Bria so that we can perfect ourselves. But that imperfect Bria could have at least been perfect on a human level. We could have been perfect, humanly perfect, not godly perfect. It could have been humanly perfect. But even on the level of human, God restrained himself and created the imperfect Bria, the imperfect human being, so he can perfect himself. So the Tzimtzum 1 is God restraining his perfection, his own godly perfection, which then created an imperfect world. And in that imperfect world, even that imperfect world and that level of world, that level of humanity, that level of creation is itself imperfect. That's Tzimtzum number 2. And now we're on page Tes, and the Seichel says to the Neshama, now that you understand this, we haven't talked about, Ramchal hasn't used yet the word Torah mitzvahs, he's been using the word shleimus, perfection, and chisoron, imperfection. We'll get to Torah mitzvahs later in the Sefer. Right now we're talking about perfection and imperfection. Amar Seichel, so the Seichel says to Neshama, in Siman Lamed, paragraph Lamed, on page Tes, excuse me, we need to understand this imperfect human being is supposed to perfect himself. Well, God already created him imperfect. If God created him imperfect, where does he have the strength? What materials does he have? What does he go to? What does he do? How can you perfect something that God actually created imperfect? It would seem to be that it's like ingrained. This is man. Man has been created imperfect. And God wants us to perfect ourselves. Well, how do we perfect something that God has embedded with imperfection? And I use the word embedded cautiously until we get to later in the Sefer, but we're embedded for the time being with imperfection by God. I say that cautiously. How do we perfect that? We are now entering a great ocean. This question is opening a great ocean of thought for us. We're going to have to go through various great introductory concepts before we can fully understand how man can perfect himself when he was created imperfect. You're going to have to be very patient, the Seichel says to Neshama. You're going to have patience. We're going to go through a lot of introductory concepts. We're going to build, and eventually we're going to have all the puzzle pieces, all the building materials. We're going to be able to put it together. But you're going to have to be patient. That's the way a wise person learns and a wise person teaches. To learn one thing at a time. Until at the end you have enough information, you can now put all the pieces together and you understand something well. And for that you need many introductions. Amra HaNeshama, the Neshama says to the Seichel, please go ahead, speak. I'm giving you my full attention and I'll be very patient with you. So this is what the Neshama says to the Seichel. Many times we don't say that to ourselves, and that's a good thing to say to ourselves. How about being patient with yourself? We say that to other people a lot of times. Can you be a little more patient? Sometimes you need to say that to yourself. Can I be a little more patient with myself in doing things? We mentioned in the Bereshit year that I was doing for the women on Thursday mornings, and we'll see if we can restart that. We're learning about Ma'aseh Bereshit. We all know that on the second day of creation, the first day God said, Yehi Or, let there be light. On the second day, God said, Yehi Rakia B'soch Hamayim, let there be a Rakia in the middle of the water below, the water above. And it doesn't say Ki Tov on Yom Sheni. On Yom Shlishi, God told the waters below to gather in one place, Yikov Hamayim, and he also told the ground that was now exposed. The water gathered in oceans, and the ground was exposed. And God said, let's have trees, let's have grass, let's have flowers. So it says Kitov twice on Yom Shlishi. Once because the work of heaven was completed. In other words, on Yom Sheni, God said there should be a firmament between the water, splitting the water above. The whole universe was water. So God said there shall be a firmament in this water, splitting the water above from the water below. And between the waters, there's a firmament. But there's no earth yet. There's water above, a firmament, and water below. It's all water below. There's no earth. So that work wasn't finished. On the third day of creation, God said, now the water below gather into one place, the Ukiyonis, an ocean. And now, Yikov Lamayim V'seiroi Hayabosha. I want to expose the earth. I want to expose the ground. Now that the ground is exposed, God said, let's have the trees, let's have the grass, let's have the tulips, let's have the rose, etc. And God said Kitov twice on Yom Shlishi, on Tuesday. Once because he finished the work of the water. On day 2, he just split the waters. On day 3, he said, now water go into an ocean. So he finished the work of the water. He said Kitov for that. And then he said Kitov on the plants and the trees. And that's why if you have a wedding, people try to make weddings on Yom Shlishi. And in the wedding invitations, they'll say Yom Shahuch Bo Kitov, the day of the double Kitov. It's the only day, we're not going to talk about Yom Shishi, it's the only day that says Kitov twice. But the question is, God can do anything. He's the perfect God. Why couldn't he finish the work of the water on day 2? He started creating the water system. The whole universe was water. And he said, I want a firmament to go between the water above and the water below. And then the day ended. And then he had to wait till day 3 and tell the water, I want you to gather together in one place so that the earth can be exposed. Why didn't he just finish it on day 2? He didn't have time, God forbid. He didn't figure it out yet on day 2, God forbid. Why didn't he finish his work on day 2? So we were learning Chumash Bereshis, and we're learning it as God talking to us each day. And one of the messages that God's telling us on day 2 is, Kindalach, listen. You're human. Sometimes you can't finish the work on one day. Sometimes work is going to carry to the second day. Even God, he could have finished the work of the water on day 2. There's no reason he couldn't. He didn't finish it on day 2 because he's talking to us. He's saying, listen, even my act of creation, I left something for the next day, and I couldn't say Ki Tov today. God didn't say Ki Tov on Monday. I didn't say Ki Tov because I didn't finish something. And you only say Ki Tov when you finish what you start. And I could finish what I start on Monday, but I'm not. I'm talking to you. You're human. You may not be able to finish what you start today. It's okay. Pick up with it tomorrow. Be patient with yourself. And this is true in things that people do. You go to sleep at night. Oh, I had so many things to do today. I didn't do anything. Oh, yeah. Now, you can handle that one of 2 ways. You can say the day was an absolute disaster. I'm just going to start fresh again tomorrow. That's not a good way to live. We don't have days that are disaster. I have a sign in my home. It says, Atakum Boker Hashar Bonus. You woke up in the morning, anything that happens for the rest of the day is just a bonus. The waking up in the morning, that you're alive, you're well, you're healthy, especially under the circumstances we're in. It's a bonus what happens during the day. You didn't get everything done you wanted to do. It's okay. Baruch Hashem was a day, as long as we spoke about in the Bereshit Shir, you didn't lazy the day. You didn't lazy the day. You did what you could as a human being. You did what you could, your best efforts. Okay? There's a husband, there's a wife, there's children, there's a bubba, there's a zayda, there are nephews, there are nieces, there are friends, there's a community. There are all different things happening, especially today. We want to help, we want to do, we want to Zoom, we want to do this. And at the end of the day, oh, but I didn't do these 3 things that I had on my to-do list. Okay? Don't look at what you didn't do. So if you lazy the day, you need to think about why you lazy the day. If you couch potato the day, then you need to think about why that happened. But if you did the best you can do, and in the process, you couldn't do everything you wanted to do, God's talking to you. I didn't finish on Monday either, and I carried it over till Tuesday. We need to be patient with ourselves. And even when we learn, we have to be patient with ourselves. We always tell others, be a little more patient. We need to be patient. It's a healthy thing to be patient with yourself. We learn, we don't understand the first time. You don't get frustrated, try again. You don't understand, ask someone. You don't understand, try again. You don't have to get frustrated with yourself. Be patient with yourself. So the Ramchal says that these hakdamas are going to require attention and patience. The Seichel says Neshama, and the Neshama says, I'm ready. I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to give you my full attention. Lamed Beis, Amar HaSeichel, the Seichel said, Rishon etzorach shetedi, the first thing you need to know, the Seichel is telling the Neshama, she'afal pi shamanu k'va she'rotza odei baruch hu laseis hasoga mikar shlei musay el nevrov, v'adei hu shlohoya harotzen b'zeh laseis lem hasoga mikol shlei musay asher loisoif shir v'tachlis klal. Ela adarabba, rak katzeh katan mimenu rotza legalis lahem, uvo yeh kol tanugam basigam oso k'mo shebiyan. We mentioned this early on in the Sefer. This is a Sefer that's telling us how we can actually come to love the Rebbeinu Shalom. We gave the mashal of a person, he has to go to court, or he's going to a din Torah. He's going to stand in front of someone who's going to judge him in some way, in front of a jury, whatever it is. You're nervous. And that's why people hire lawyers or they hire Tanim. Why? Because besides the fact that they don't know the law, and besides the fact that they don't know the halacha, they don't know how the system operates. They don't know what you can say, what you can't say, who goes first, who goes second. You enter a courtroom. Who sits on the right side of the courtroom? The plaintiff or the defendant? Who sits on the left side? You walk in there, you don't want to insult yourself and embarrass yourself by sitting at the wrong table, and the judge has to say, will you please stand up and go to the other side? You don't know when you can talk, when you can sit, when you can stand. That's why people hire representatives. They hire lawyers, Tanim, and in many other areas in life, you hire someone to represent you. You don't want to look silly, and you're scared because you don't know how the system operates. When we grow to the greatest system in the world, which is how the world operates, and this is where the Sefer begins, I think the world's in chaos. And when people begin to feel the world's in a state of chaos, they get scared because they don't know what's coming next. Is there a pilot flying this plane or the pilot parachute and we're an automatic pilot and at any moment we can crash? Is there a God that's actually in the pilot seat that's running this airplane? Or did he, God forbid, bail out and just the world is going in its merry direction and we're in the survival of the fittest? Where are we here? And if you don't understand how the system operates, how God runs the world, and specifically how he runs a person's life, and how he allows a person to make choices in life, and when those choices can be made, and when those choices can't be made. If you don't understand the system, either you get very scared of the system or you believe there is no system and it's just chaos. Either way, you're very scared. You're scared because you don't understand how it works, or you're scared because you think there is no system and it's chaos. This Sefer is meant to say, Ragua. God created a perfectly imperfect world and he's running it and supervising it. Now, there are times you can understand. There are times you can't. There are many times we grew up with our parents and they did things We didn't understand why they did it. And when we get older, we look back, we have memories. We say, oh, I remember that. Why I really didn't understand Papa and Mama when they did that. And all of a sudden, something comes back and says, you know, in the bigger scope of things, it actually made sense. I think I'm even a better person because of it. The Ribono Shel Olam is running a world in a very complex way. There are, whatever, 7, 8 billion human beings, and however many trees, and however many zebras, tulips, roses. All this has to be intimately supervised. You walk by a garden, or you're in a place where you can pick flowers, and you pick a rose. You're doing something there. The rose grew at God's command. You got to pick the rose because God decided that you would be the person to enjoy this particular rose. So everything is being supervised to the minute detail. And that's a new comfort level for us. It doesn't mean that I understand it. It just means that there is a pilot in the cockpit. We're not an automatic pilot. I don't understand why the pilot's going through this wind and why my seat is shaking from turbulence. I don't understand why we couldn't take a different route. But this is what it is. I may take out a Tehillim while there's turbulence and say Tehillim. But I'm not getting out of my seat during the turbulence, knocking down the cockpit door, throwing the pilot out of the cockpit and getting into his seat and say, I can drive this plane better. You can drive the plane better. Just get back into your seat, buckle in. If you want to, close your eyes. If you wanted to, say Tehillim and let the pilot do his job. And Ribono Shel Olam is here. He's running the ship. He's piloting the plane. We don't understand it, but there is no chaos. And the first thing you need to know, the Ramchal says in Lamed Beis, is this that God allows us to know is a minuscule of how the world is being run. We can't understand God's entire chachma. It's impossible. No human being will ever comprehend that. But God created a world in a systematic approach. That's why it took 6 days. God could have done a godly Big Bang. Vayomer Elokim yehi olam. Let there be a world. That's it. And what would have come out of the words olam? Everything that we see today. Man, monkeys, tulips, roses, mules, everything we see today. It all would have been the same. God could have said yehi olam. Why did he do it in 6 days? And with 10 mamores, which is the first question in Parakeh of Pirkei Avos? Because God created a world called a process world. It's going to be built slowly in stages. And the reason he did it that way and not boom, Big Bang, because if he would have said Yehi Olam and everything would have come from it, we would have no opportunity to understand the world around us. We would have no opportunity whatsoever to understand how God runs the world, because it would have done in that instantaneous millisecond, and then we would all be here. Man, plants, we would all be here at the same time. And we'd have no way of our brains to understand what happened, how did it happen, because our brains are processors, right? The computers, we call them processors. Our brains are processors. They process information. They need time to go from stage 1 to stage 2. They need pieces of information and put it together. That's why the Ribono Shel Olam created the world this way, to give us the opportunity, the chesed, so we can understand the world around us. But we need to learn these kind of svarim to understand the world around us. But that's why God did this in what's called the Hadraga. This is a world of process. It was created in a slow stage by stage process so that we can study the Torah, we can study these kind of svarim and not feel like we're in a world and don't understand what's going on around us. We're going to be able to understand what's going on around us. God is supervising it, but we can only understand the details to the extent that a human processor can understand it. The full details we'll never get to. And that's the first thing the Seichel said, Neshama, you need to understand. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but we're not even going to scratch the surface of what's really the system of the world, how God runs the world. And God did this to us as a favor. He did it in this process so we can have some connection to the process, understand the process. This is a very simple concept. Because we can understand that we as creations can never fully fathom the full shlemus, the full perfection, and all the things that go into God's perfection, His perfect knowledge, His perfect strength, etc. We can't understand that perfection. As Eov says, you can't come to the ultimate tachlis of who God is. Nimtza. Therefore, anything that a human being can understand about this system of how the world runs, it's not even a drop in the ocean. That which we can understand is not even a drop in the ocean of God's perfection. Amra HaNeshama, the Neshama says that this is simple for anybody who has a wise heart. Ukvanema, David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Mi Malel Gevuras Hashem. Who can talk about God's power? You can't talk about it. You don't know what it is. You can't describe it. God is so powerful. He's a million nuclear bombs. You can't talk this way, Chas v'shalom. And as we mentioned, I believe, earlier, yesterday or the day before, the fact that we say in Shemona Esrei, Hakel, Hagodol, Hagibor, Vahanora, the Gemara tells us in Brachas and Megillah that we would not be allowed to say those words. You cannot call God a Godol. What does Godol mean? He's great. How great is he? If you praise someone, there's going to be a question. He's a great person. Well, what makes him great? I say Gibor. He's mighty. How mighty is he? What can he do with his might? Nola, he's awesome. Tell me what he can do. What is he? Why is he awesome? You say these words, you open yourself to questions that your seichel wants to know. And therefore, you're not allowed to say these words. Why do we say these words? The Gemara says, because Moshe Rabbeinu said these words. In Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Gadol, Gibor, and Noah. Moshe Rabbeinu called God a Gadol, Gibor, Noah. And since he had permission to say it, although he was on a much greater level than we can imagine, but through the fact that he said Gadol, Gibor, and Noah, the Gemara says that we have permission to say that in Shemona Esrei. Gadol, Gibor, Noah. Otherwise, we couldn't say those words. So, Mi Yamal Gevuras Hashem. Who is going to start talking about God's power? No one. You can't. But what God did allow us to understand is available for us, and that's available to us because God created a system world through a process. And our processors can process a process world, not the godly Big Bang world. We couldn't process that. We'll stop here for today. The next subject, as you can see, is Gilui Yichud Hashem Yisod Habriya. This is perhaps the most fundamental concept in all the Ramchal's writings, the Gilui of Yichud, the revelation of God's uniqueness. And that's something that he will discuss in the Sefer. And the Ramchal talks about the ultimate Gilui HaYichud will bring us to Bias Mashiach. That's what we're working towards. We're working towards Gilui HaYichud B'mher V'Yameinu. Those, Klal Yisrael, and the fine people of the world, they're also God's creation. Who need refuah should have refuahs. Those who need Yeshua should have Yeshuas. Those who need nechamis, Rebbeinu Shalom console them, give them nechama. Rebbeinu Shalom open the hearts, minds, ears, eyes of the people of the world, that they move forward to make this a better place, that they work forward to make this imperfectly imperfect world a more perfect place. People should stop talking about, let's go back to normal. It wasn't normal before. Okay? It wasn't a normal world before. Anybody that thinks the world before this was normal, it wasn't normal. The corruption, the perversion, the immorality, and hopefully some of that got cleansed and will continue to be cleansed. We're looking forward, not back. I don't want to go back to normal. I want to go forward to a new, beautiful, healthy, pure world. And that's what we're looking forward to. So, Rebbeinu Shalom, please, we don't need any more lessons, hopefully. We've learned a very painful lesson in the last few weeks. If we learn something from that painful lesson, then we don't need the pain anymore. Ramchal's going to talk about that as well later in the Sefer. You don't need any lessons once you're taught. Lessons are only the teacher needs to get up in front of the room and teach if you haven't learned the lesson yet. And the teacher will come back to the room tomorrow when the students still don't understand yesterday's lesson. He'll repeat the lesson and he'll keep on repeating it. And sometimes, remember, we were children, the teacher would come in and says, I marked everyone's test. Nobody got higher than a 78. Everybody can go home and study again. I'm doing a retest tomorrow. We don't want to be in that. We don't want to be there spiritually. We want to be able to say, we learned a lesson here, Rabbona Shalom. We can move forward to be a better people, a better community. And we don't need to come to the classroom tomorrow and have the same lesson taught, Chas v'shalom, again in another way, Chas v'shalom. So, Rabbona Shalom, help everybody open their eyes, their ears, their minds, their hearts, to understand what the lesson was for each person. Everybody has something else that they should have learned during this period. And there's the community lesson, there's the global lesson, but everybody should be able to take something from this and make themselves a little more perfect. Take that perfectly imperfect person, the perfectly imperfect world, make it a little more perfect, and we'll be zeicha to bring Mashiach Tzidkeinu b'her b'yameinu. Amen. Everybody have a wonderful day.